Am I still on? Okay. Page 185 is our prayer. You can say it out loud with me. You can read along, whatever you prefer. Christ, my Lord, the giver of light and wisdom, who opened the eyes of the blind man and transformed the fishermen into wise heralds and teachers of the gospel through the coming of the Holy Spirit, shine also in my mind the light of the grace of the Holy Spirit. Grant me discernment, understanding, and wisdom in learning. Enable me to complete my assignments and to abound in every good work, for to you I give honor and glory. Amen. Most blessed Lord, send the grace of your Holy Spirit on me, to strengthen me that I may learn well the subject I am about to study, and by it become a better person for your glory, the comfort of my family, and the benefit of your church and our nation. Amen. Very good. I have sonnets, and I think, okay, so for the most part, everybody seemed to see what was going on. For some people, I might have written numbers in the margin, and it means this is the number of syllables you actually wrote. Because remember, 10 syllables. It's always 10 syllables in a line. I am not asking anyone to rewrite this sonnet, all right? Going forward, we're going to start, if somebody doesn't do what I ask for, I'm going to ask you to maybe redo that, but it has to be pretty egregiously you didn't do what I asked for, okay? Like you leave a comma out, I'm not going to say, take this away. Or you misspell one word. I'm not interested in being brutal to you guys, But actually, why don't I collect your summas first? And then we won't, I'll know I got everything from you and I can give back and we won't get the two piles mixed up. Thank you, thank you. Oh, it's the top secret. I'll put it on the bottom. See, now you know my pain. It's hard. It's really hard to shoot those things down the table. Okay. Also, one other thing before we get into it. So I have decided that it would be fun, at least for me, to have a couple of book discussions, actually 4 book discussions this year. It's totally optional. It has nothing to do with this class in the sense that it's something we're going to talk about here. But I have some books that I've always wanted to read with students, and they kind of talk about, interestingly, for a lot of you that did my medieval year last year and then are doing the modern, it's kind of that crossover. It's sort of juxtaposing a medieval worldview and a modern worldview. And it's the C.S. Lewis, what is known as the Space Trilogy. C.S. Lewis wrote 3 books that involve, 2 of them involve space travel, and they're fascinating. I mean, and they're C.S. Lewis. But I give you guys a lot to read. And I realized, I don't want another book to read. Fine, it's fine. Some people read really fast, or they just, eat books like Skittles. I don't know, something that you eat really fast. M&Ms in my case. And so you would like another book. So we're going to do one in October and one in December and one in February and one in April. And we're probably not going to meet here. I'm not going to ask people to drive out to my house probably, because for most of you, how many of you live in Illinois? I mean, other than the people I know. Most of you live in Iowa, right? So it's probably easier if we meet in Iowa. So I thought we might meet at the church that I attend. Anyway, so I sent an email out to your parents is the point of this. And so I heard back from some. If this interests you, I don't care. You know what? If one person wants to come talk about the book, I'm going to come talk about it with one person. I'm doing it.
All
right.
I wanted to read that trilogy for a long time.
And just FYI, so the first one, I think it's October. It's October 18. 16, 17, it's a Thursday afternoon, because the people who answered back said Thursdays are better, and one boy said afternoons are better. So it's like a 3:30 to 5, but some people might be working then, you might have other things. It's fine. I don't think ill of you if you don't come to this. It's fine. But it's just fun for me, because I really like these books. I thought it'd be fun to talk about them. The first one is the shortest. So the one for October, it's really, I have paperback, I don't know. It's like 150 pages or something. It's not very long. Anyway, check email. I sent those out to your parents. Or if you're on the email list, it should have gone out to you as well. You're just all welcome to do that. And maybe I'll make cookies. All right, here are your sonnets. Charlotte, everybody's all nervous now. Oh, by the way, I really loved the variety of topics. Elizabeth, that is Noah's. You know what? I'm just going to decide that you guys are all interchangeable. Just, it is a SimPal paper. Because Mark and Luke are already interchangeable, obviously, for me. Okay, this one doesn't have a name, so we're going to wait till the end. Luke didn't nail it. Dominic, oh, okay, I got another chance with Mark. Oh, yeah. Gabriel, is it 2? Nathan, okay, who didn't get one? I'm auctioning off. Oh, what? It's what?
It's probably Noah's.
It's probably Noah's. Oh, yes. Can you take it to him? And also, I am recording the class, so you can watch it. Okay, so, I mean, I was not a real stickler. Like, I didn't scan your poetry. And almost nobody really nailed the meter great, let's be honest. But it takes a lot of practice. But I was just like, did you give me 10 syllables? Just give me 10 syllables and I'm happy. But it was really fun. The topics, I just got some very interesting topics. And so thank you for giving it a try. As far as I remember, we will be doing another one or some other sort of poetry, right? And so we can give it another shot. So if you didn't nail the number of syllables perfectly, it's okay. You got another shot at it. It's all right. And, well, actually, I have good news, but we'll hold off. Oh, no. Actually, why not give you the good news now? I'm not going to ask you to write anything this week. But I am going to ask you to do something. And we're going to talk about it now because you know I will run out of time at the end. So could you please find a blank page in your reading guide? Like page 10 is blank. So you can write this down. Next week, everything you're going to read is in your book. It's the next section in your book. What? Yes, what you're reading for this for next. In other words, reading this week to talk about next Tuesday. And so it's on pages 12 to 30 in your reading guide. Page 30 is questions about it, and the rest of it is just stuff I want you to read. What kind of stuff? Well, first of all, we are reading what Benjamin Franklin had to say about a British preacher named George Whitefield, that sometimes people call him Whitefield, but he toured the Americas, the colonies, preaching, and apparently was quite the rousing speaker, so much so that Ben Franklin, who was not a particularly highly religious man, thought very highly of him. So this is from Ben Franklin's autobiography. Then on page 15, you have a sermon, part of a sermon by George Whitefield. This guy that apparently is an amazing speaker, and I'd like you to read that. Then the last thing you're reading, well, actually on page 18, there's a letter that I want you to read. A letter from a pastor named Jonathan Edwards to another pastor, talking about the fact that there was an amazing revival, a spiritual revival happening in colonial America. And that same Jonathan Edwards wrote a very, very famous sermon. It is called Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. And all Christians should be exposed to sinners in the hands of an angry God, just to find out what it's about. And so I want you to read that too. And then there are questions on page 30. So it's just, that's all the reading for this week. But here's what I want you to write down and what I want you to do instead of write for me. Aristotle and the other ancient Greeks who wrote about rhetoric, who wrote about how to persuade people, said there's 3 main ways we persuade people. One way is called, this is the part to write down, logos. And it means appealing to your reason, reasoning with you. And you may have heard the term logos. It's a Greek word, and it's on the end of, biology, theology. Logos means reason, but it means a ton of stuff. It can mean sentence. It can mean idea or thought. It can actually mean proportion. It can mean the underlying main point of something. In rhetoric, it usually means just reasoning with people. So in other words, if I want to convince you to carry an umbrella with you when you come to class today, I might explain to you how I watch the weather every night. The weatherman said there was an 84% chance of rain. And then I might try to tell you that the weatherman is usually right, which may or may not be true. And it won't do any harm, you know. Umbrellas are not very heavy, so you might as well have it. Do you see I'm reasoning with you? I'm trying to persuade you because it's reasonable. But we don't always do that. Sometimes we appeal to ethos. This one's a little harder, but this is appealing to the personal character of the speaker. In other words, in case you don't know what that means later, we can put in parentheses, listen to me, I'm good. I'm a good person. You know, I care very deeply about all of you, and it would make me so sad if you got sick, so I really wish you'd carry an umbrella, because, you know, if you guys get sick, I'm just going to go home, I'm going to cry all day, and I might not eat, I might get sick too, and you don't want that to happen to me. Okay, now, I'm not reasoning with you at all. This is totally unreasonable. Not that I don't care if you get sick. Noah, if you're missing because you're sick, I am sorry. But I'm not trying to reason with you. I'm trying to tug at your heartstrings, we would say, right? Oh, no, I'm sorry, that's pathos. I am trying to convince you that I'm a good person. I'm a caring person. But I did both. I accidentally did both. That's why I got confused. All right? I am a good, caring teacher. And I feel it so deeply when something happens to you. Now, I'm sorry. I bled into the other one. I got ahead of myself, which is pathos, which is tugging at your heartstrings. It's appealing to emotion. I did both there. I am a good person who cares, and now I want you to feel bad if I feel bad. You know, if you don't start listening to the weatherman, the weatherman's going to be out of work. His children are going to starve. Just because you don't listen to him and you don't bring umbrellas. Listen to the weatherman. You don't want his children to starve, do you? He's going to get fired. You know, if they're going to go out, nobody's going to have an umbrella. That's more appealing to emotion. I did it both times. So here's what I'd like you to do. You guys are probably aware that sermons, and I mean this in a very good way, are good samples of rhetoric. Now, the reason people have a problem with me saying that is because we use rhetoric to mean empty, blowhard promises, but that's not what it means. It means persuading. That's simply what rhetoric means. It means the art of persuading. And of course, what do pastors or priests or clergymen want to do? They want to persuade you to obey God. They want to persuade you to trust him. They want to persuade you to read your Bible and believe it. They want to persuade. So when you read, not so much the Ben Franklin, right? And not so much the letter, but the two sermons, I want you to look for these. I want you to ask yourself, oh, this is a perfect place. He is so putting himself up as someone who can be trusted. Or, you know what? If it's about the Bible, putting God up as someone. Saying God is omniscient and all-powerful and loves you, that's sort of appealing to the ethos of God. God is good. He can be trusted. Or are they reasoning with them? Are they explaining to them why this is true? Logically. Or are they just trying to work up their emotions? And so what I'd like you to do is maybe have a pen or a pencil in your hand when you read. It's really not that much reading this week. And just put it in the corner. You can just even L, E, or P if you want to, you know, and just mark a section. It's like, oh, appeal to ethos. Oh, appeal to logos. And I want to talk about that next week. That's all I want you to do, is read that and mark those appeals. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. because I know you're all just so eager to get into Descartes, because he's so amazing. Um, let's read our poems, and then we'll jump in. On page 11, we finally have stuff that's not sonnets, although the first one is, so. George Herbert was an Anglican priest, so in the Church of England. And he wrote almost exclusively religious poetry and a lot about grace. The grace of God is his theme. And also, I didn't give you this poem, but as far as I know, he's the first one who did this. He wrote poems where the words printed on the page had a certain shape, like they looked like the thing he was talking about. So he has this poem called Easter Wings, and it's about the resurrection, right? It's like we rise up on bright wings because of the resurrection. But the words on the page are shaped like this. Like the middle lines are really short. So obviously it doesn't have set meter because the lines get shorter and shorter, and then the lines get longer and longer. And it looks like wings. It's awesome. I don't know if anybody did that before him. I did not give you that one. It was hard to type into the book, and I'm too lazy for that. So you can look up Easter Wings if you want to. But the first one is actually a sonnet. I'm going to read it, Redemption. What does it mean to redeem something?
To make like woman's justice. To bring something back up is another way to put it.
In a way. What do you think, Neil?
So like if you redeem something's value, it's like you put it back on. It's like if you lost it, you would put it back on par.
Okay. To make something equal again. So, for example, do you guys know what a pawn shop is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you pawn something because you need money, but they don't sell it, I've never pawned anything. I don't know how this works. If they hold on to it for a certain amount of time, don't know. But you can come and redeem it. You can give them the money because, you give them your ring or whatever, and they give you some money for it. But if you get the money back, you have enough money, you can go buy it back. That's literally what redemption is. So when we talk about, Jesus the Redeemer, it's good for us to think, what does that mean? He bought us back. We belonged, very much like Apollyon accuses Christian, right? You belong to me, and you've ditched me as your landlord. And that's how Apollyon accused Christian. But God bought us back. Okay, let's check out this sonnet. All I want to know is, what's the main idea? I'll ask you a couple of specific questions maybe to make it easier. Having been tenant long to a rich lord, not thriving, I resolved to be bold and make a suit unto him to afford a new small rented lease and cancel the old. In heaven, at his manor I him sought. They told me there that he was lately gone about some land which he had dearly bought long since on earth to take possession. I straight returned, and knowing his great birth, sought him accordingly in great resorts, in cities, theaters, gardens, parks, and courts. At length I heard a ragged noise and mirth of thieves and murderers. There I him espied, who straight, your suit is granted, said, and died. What does the speaker want? What does he need? What's his problem? Yeah, Neil.
Oh, he's like can't afford.
Yeah.
That he's paying.
He's paying rent that he's not thriving. He's got a farm. It's not doing well. He needs to redo the lease. This is not working for me. I need to rent somewhere else. I need to work out a deal. I need to cut a deal with the landlord because I can't really afford the cost. Where does he look for the landlord?
Manor.
Yeah, in heaven at his manor. But is he there?
No.
No, well, where is he?
He was.
Parks,
It
theater.
doesn't say where, but cities, theaters, gardens, like.
Mm-hmm,
great
mm-hmm. It says, they told me there that he was lately gone about some land which he had dearly bought long since on earth. He's not there anymore. He's on earth because he bought something there. He's looking into it. Yeah.
It sounds kind of like Jesus. If he died next to the thieves.
It sounds very much like Jesus, and that's exactly what's going on. Because he's not in the fancy places, is he? The cities, the theaters, gardens, parks. He's with the thieves and murderers. And the last thing he says is, I grant your request. Your suit is granted. Oh, you'll get a new lease. You get life. And died. I love that one. Let's skip it up and go to love 3. It's like, love 3? Because there are 2 other loves that he wrote. Apparently he likes love. He writes a lot of poems called love. All right, this one's a little, I don't know if this one's harder or not. Love bade me welcome, yet my soul drew back, guilty of dust and sin. But quick-eyed love, observing me grow slack from my first entrance in, drew nearer to me, sweetly questioning if I lacked anything. A guest, I answered, worthy to be here. Love said, you shall be he. I, the unkind, ungrateful? Ah, my dear, I cannot look on thee. Love took my hand, and smiling did reply, who made the eyes but I? Truth, Lord, but I have marred them. Let my shame go where it doth deserve. And know you not, says love, who bore the blame? My dear, then I will serve. You must sit down, says love, and taste my meat. So I did sit and eat. Does the guest think he should be there?
No.
Why not?
He just doesn't think he's worthy.
I'm not good enough to be here. And what does love say? Basically. Does love say, yeah, you're right. You're a
No.
dirty, rotten scoundrel. Leave.
No.
No. He says, I made your eyes. You can look on me. I made your eyes. Don't you know I bore the blame? And at the end, will love even let him be a servant? He says, I will serve. You must sit down and taste my meat. So I did sit and eat. Love that gives everything, right? All right. I would like to meditate on these slowly, but Descartes is waiting. So we're going to read The Collar. I love The Collar. This is my favorite George Herbert. For I don't know why. But it was in my English book in high school. And I loved it. I didn't even really understand it. I just liked the way it sounded, you know? I just like, it was cool. And so I decided to memorize it, but I only have half of it still, unfortunately. So I can't recite it for you. I need to get that back, but I didn't practice it enough, and so I lost part of it. All right, here's what I want to know. What is the mood of the speaker? And what is the answer he gets? I will read it dramatically, in which case it will be very easy to know the mood of the speaker. Okay? I struck the board and cried, no more! I will abroad. What? Shall I ever sigh and pine? My lines in life are free. Free as the road, loose as the wind, as large as store. Shall I be still in suit? Have I no harvest but a thorn to let me blood, and not restore what I have lost with cordial fruit? Sure there was wine before my sighs did dry it. There was corn before my tears did drown it. Is the year only lost to me? Have I no bays to crown it, no flowers, no garlands gay, all blasted, all wasted? Not so, my heart, but there is fruit, and thou hast hands. Recover all thy sigh-blown age on double pleasures. Leave thy cold dispute of what is fit and not. Forsake thy cage, thy rope of sands, which petty thoughts have made, and made to thee good cable, to enforce and draw and be thy law while thou didst wink and wouldst not see. Away, take heed, I will abroad. Call in thy death's head there, tie up thy fears. He that forbears to suit and serve his need deserves his load. Okay, I'm going to stop there before the beginning. What's his mood? He's ticked off because life stinks. You know, I have no harvest but thorn. What do I gather out of my fields? Thorns that make me bleed. It's all wasted. No flowers, no garlands. What am I going to do? Double down. Recover all thy sigh-blown age on double pleasures. I will abroad. I'm out of here. That's what we would say. I am out of here. But as I raved and grew more fierce and wild at every word, methought I heard one calling, child. And I replied, my Lord. All right, one word from the Lord, right? Chill. Calm down. It's not as bad as you think. Persevere. You're not alone. There was just something about the sound of that poem. Maybe I was an angry teenager. I don't know. The collar. Why do you think it's called? This is an interesting, and it might get multiple answers in this room, I feel like. Why is it called the collar? What does a collar make you think? I said it might make people in here think different things. What are you thinking, Neil?
I think like it stops them from moving and like you put a collar on a dog.
Okay, so attached to a leash, but this is kind of in a good sense, right? Because, do we always tie up our animals to be mean to them? No, we don't want them to get run over in the road, right? This is why you put him on a leash when you take him for a walk, right? Because I was going to say dogs are stupid. Dogs aren't necessarily stupid, but they are easily distracted, and they don't just say squirrel, and they don't really think about car, Or sometimes they do think about car, and they chase them. So the collar shows ownership, right? And it shows safety. But guys, what type of person is known for wearing a collar of a certain type? He's an Anglican priest. They wear the collar, too, in the Anglican church. He's a priest. I'm so tired of this. People just have problems all the time, and they're coming to me all the time with their problems, and I'm just done. But child, no, I'm with you. I'll give you strength. I think it means both. I really think it means both. Okay. Spend some time with George Herbert this week. If you're interested in Easter wings in a cool shaped poem or other shaped poems of George Herbert, you could look them up. But read through these several times this week. Spend some time with them. All right. Now the main event, because you're all looking so excited because you just loved Descartes, didn't you? It is kind of hard. I brought pages and pages and pages of notes, and I'm not going to talk about any of that. I know it, but it just makes me feel good to have it close by. Let's see if we can figure out what Descartes' point is. And before we launch into it at all, can anyone tell me what is Descartes proposing in this little book? If you could sum it up, what does he seem to think people need to do, or what does he want to do? Well, I think he's motioning he wants Neil to go. Neil is his.
I thought you were raising.
Oh, yeah. Okay, go for it, Neil. Nobody wants it.
Well, he's like proposing a new way to think, basically, a new idea of how to figure things out, not using any old philosophy,
Yeah.
just totally new.
Let's wipe the slate clean. All those musty, dusty old philosophers, gone. They're out of here. Because you know what? We don't know anything for sure. All this philosophy. What is life? Why am I here? What is God? You don't know. You've been talking about it for several thousand years, and you don't know. So we need to do something else here. And I don't know if you noticed, the full title is Discourse on the Method for Conducting One's Reason Well and Seeking Truth in the Sciences. Oh, so he limits it a little bit there. Sciences. And by Descartes' time, he really does mean kind of what we call the sciences. The ancients didn't always mean by science what we call science, but Descartes did. You might remember that our very first week, I told you about Francis Bacon, the guy who got pneumonia stuffing a chicken with snow. Yeah, everybody, I know, everybody. these guys with snow and cold. I know, it's very sad. Descartes, Bacon said the same thing. He said we need to concentrate on what we call the sciences, the hard sciences, because they're the only thing we can really explore well. Because all these weird philosophical, deep questions, I don't know, don't do me any good. And Descartes kind of followed on that. So in part one, what premises does he start with? In the very first paragraph, he says something is true. He says several things are true. Maybe notice what he said was true? Like it's the very first sentence or two. Yeah. Noah. Reason is equal in all men. Good sense is the best distributed thing in the world. For everyone thinks himself to be so well endowed with it that even those who are the most difficult to please in everything else are not at all want to desire more of it than they have. Everybody has good sense. Because if you ask someone, do you have good sense? Do you want more good sense? Like, no, I'm good. I've got plenty. And then he says, it is not likely that everyone is mistaken in this. Does anybody have a problem with that? Does anybody think that some people might have more reason or good sense?
Yeah.
How about Aristotle and Plato and Aquinas and all those people that he said, throw them out? Seriously, guys, one of the most important philosophical books ever written starts like that. Everybody has good sense, because everybody thinks they have good sense. So they must, because they wouldn't think something that wasn't true. Now, you might say, that's wacky. But we already, because we read it, we already know where he's headed. He's going to head to a place where he says, I am a thing that thinks. That's his famous statement, right? I'm just a thing that thinks. So he's got to start out strong, right? Like everybody thinks that they're pretty reasonable, and I don't think everybody's wrong. Like the majority couldn't possibly be wrong about something, and therefore everybody must have plenty of reason. Yes, so it follows that good sense or reason is naturally equal in all men. So then why do we disagree? This is the next question I asked you. If we're all equally reasonable, why do we ever disagree with each other?
We all have different opinions, feelings.
We have different opinions, and how do we get those different opinions? He says, you want to do it, Neil?
Oh,
Go for it.
I was gonna add, they take different things into consideration.
Yeah. He said, we lead our thoughts along different paths and do not take the same things into consideration. So we don't examine the same truths, and so we come to different conclusions. Does he say how we would know which of us came to wrong conclusions? He just says we come to different conclusions. I mean, in that sentence, does he say? He doesn't really, he just says, well, we go to different places. Basically, we end up in different places because we take different roads. Is one road better than the other, Mr. Descartes? And how will we know? Now, he is going to answer that question for us. How will we choose a road? So I'll give him that. He doesn't really ever answer for us how he thinks everybody has equal good sense. All right, so here's the thing. If we just all followed the same road, we wouldn't disagree with each other. We got to find the road. And if we all do follow the same road, we'll all get to the same place eventually because we're all equally good map readers, or, we're all equally able to find our way on the path because we all have equal good sense. Okay, what does he like about math? And what does he not like about philosophy? Yeah, Gabriel.
The reason I believe he liked math is because of the certainty in the evidence of reasoning, and then the reason he didn't like philosophy is they keep talking about like virtue and stuff, but they don't really tell us how. They didn't really tell anybody how to find it.
Exactly, exactly. I delighted most of all in mathematics because of the certainty and the evidence of its reasonings. Guys, 2 plus 2 is just 4. It just is. It always is. And I don't care what, 2 of what. I don't care. It just always is, right? And so later he compares geometry. So how many of you have taken some geometry or done geometry or are doing geometry? All right. You know it consists generally of a series of steps taking you from here to here. Prove this. This is what you have. This is what you're proving. But every step has to be supported by what came before. You can't just suddenly say, I don't know, it looks like the same size angle to me. No, you have to prove that it's the same size angle, right? And Descartes loves this. Descartes is known, partly as being a mathematician, right? Cartesian planes and Cartesian, geometry. He loves it because it's always true, and I know it for sure. If you don't believe me that 2 plus 2 is 4, what could I do to prove it to you?
Do finger math.
Yeah, we can do this. I can get rocks, get an abacus, use those little math manipulatives that the little kindergartners use or whatever, K through 3. And I can prove it to you. And I can keep getting 2 things and 2 more things and putting them there over and over. It doesn't matter how many times I do it. I'm never going to fail to end up with 4. I can prove it to you. But what is the meaning of life? That's really hard to prove if I have an idea. So we don't like philosophy. We being Descartes, right? Descartes doesn't like it because he can't ever know it's true. He said, philosophy has been cultivated for many centuries by the most excellent minds that have ever lived. And nevertheless, there is nothing in it about which there is not some dispute, and consequently nothing that is not doubtful. So this is part 1. His first, because he's trying to put together one of those geometry type proofs, right? And part 1 is nobody knows anything for sure, except in math and geometry and places like that. That we know. So if we want to know anything for sure, we got to do it like that. Now, does anybody see a problem already? With every question I might ever ask myself, I'm going to answer it like a geometrical proof. Is there a problem?
Not everything is solid evidence.
Yeah,
Not
no, go ahead.
everything is solid evidence that you can use to
Yeah.
prove it.
Do you want to add? I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Just a little slow on the draw there, right? Neil's quick draw. Say it. Yeah, we say it again, Neil.
Not everyone is, like, you can't test everything.
You can't
Solid evidence.
test everything. So, can you think of something we can't test? Can you think of an example? How am I going to prove that? I did my little, was it you guys I did the snake thing with? Is there a snake in the room? Was that with you guys or the junior high? I think it was the little kids. Never mind. I don't have time to go there. But I mean, there's ways to prove, for example, that atheism doesn't make sense. But I can't prove the personal God of the Bible or something like that. I mean, I can reason with you that it's very likely that there is a supreme power that made everything, and this is a very reasonable thing to believe. But I can't, like the incarnation, that's hard to prove. So it sounds a little bit like Mr. Descartes is only going to be able to focus on one group of things, right? Things that you can prove like that with 100% surety. But we'll have to wait and see what he thinks about those other things that we can't prove that way. All right, part 2. What does Descartes think will be the best way to begin reforming the sciences? You have to kind of read between the lines on this one, but I already kind of said it this morning while we were talking. What's his first step going to be?
Wiping the slate clean.
Get rid of everything. Get rid of everything. He said, things are very, very much better organized when you just can build everything from the ground up, right? And you go to these old cities, these old European cities that have all these winding roads, and they're very narrow because they've built on and built on and built on. There was a building at my college, at my university, and I am not joking. There were parts of the building you couldn't get to from other parts of the building, unless you went all the way down to the front door and started over again. What? And I'm a freshman, and I'm wandering around looking for my room, and I'm up on the 3rd floor, whatever. It's like, where's room whatever? And somebody older is like, no, you can't get there from here. Go back downstairs, and then turn the other way, and go up the other stairs, and you'll get to the other. And I thought they were joking. They were making fun of a stupid freshman, No, it was serious. You could not get there because it was built on and built on and built on, and not all the sections. Sometimes there were walls, and then you just can't get there unless you go to the other stairs. So Descartes said knowledge is kind of like that right now. It's like that terrible building that you can't get from one place to the other. Knock it down and build a decent one from the ground up. So that's exactly what he says he wants to do. My plan is to reform my own thoughts and build upon a foundation which is completely my own. All right, great. I'm going to wipe it clean and start over. Now I want to read something to you guys. And I want you to tell me if you see any problem with it, okay? The single resolution to rid oneself of all opinions to which one has heretofore given credence is not an example everyone should follow. And the world consists almost exclusively of 2 kinds of minds for whom it is not at all suitable. First, there are those who, believing themselves more capable than they are unable to avoid being hasty in their judgments. The second are those who have enough reason or modesty to judge that they are less capable of distinguishing the true from the false. Here's who shouldn't use my method. People who don't have as much good sense as other people, or don't realize it. What's wrong with that?
He was saying earlier that everyone has equal sense.
He just said we all have equal sense. He just said it a few pages ago. He says, no, if you don't have as much sense as... Now, I'm going to throw him a bone. I'm going to cut him a little slack. And it is this. Descartes is writing this not very long after the Galileo episode. And although Galileo, the whole story has been inflated, and they didn't try to kill him, and he was stubborn and ornery, and he brought it on himself to some extent. But it did send out a warning signal. If you say certain things in print about the sciences, you might get in trouble. So is he saying then, this is just me. Don't worry, this is just me. This is my little story. But you don't need to do it. Some people shouldn't do it. I'm just going to do this over here. I'm not teaching anyone to do it. I'm just going to do it. In fact, in part 1, he says, this is kind of like a fable. He calls it a fable. This is just like a little fable. And he uses the word fable a couple of times. He said, how fables can enlighten you. But you see, when he calls it a fable, he takes a step back, right? It's just this little fable that I'm telling. But don't take it seriously. Don't put me in prison, Don't come after me, church. I don't know, but because it seems like a glaring mistake. You just said everybody had equal reason and good sense, and then you said, but some of you who don't have equal reason and good sense maybe shouldn't do this. So is he covering his behind, as they say, or is he serious? I don't know. We can't ask him because, he went to Sweden and got pneumonia. So, what are the 4 laws of this new method? What are the rules he's going to follow? What's one of them, Gabriel?
Never accept anything as true if you do not know as such. Or
Yeah.
something.
Never accept anything as true that I did not plainly know to be such. Wow. Okay. So I'm trying to think of something. Help me. What's something you believe is true that is not plain and obvious? By the way, maybe I should show you what plain and obvious means. Plainly know to be true. I guess I don't need to write this on the board. The circle is round. Do you know that's true? Do I need to show you the circle? It is not round, it's not a circle. That's self-evident, that's plainly true. The triangle was a three-sided figure. Yeah, that's what a triangle is. I know it's true without even having to reason, right? I'm not going to believe anything unless it's plainly true. That sounds a little limiting. It's more than a little limiting. Okay, second. What's his second rule?
Divide difficulties.
Divide each of the difficulties into as many parts as possible to examine them. Okay, I'm being a little hard on Descartes. Well, we should be hard on Descartes because he kind of ruined thought. But also because if we had like 3 hours, and you're all like, oh, thank goodness we don't have 3 hours. I'm like, shoot, we don't have 3 hours. We would unwind it a little more. Have you guys ever dissected something? Like a frog? I had one boy yesterday said a raccoon. I'm like, what? You dissected a raccoon? He's like, no, just the bones. Have you dissected something, Jonathan? Okay. So, and what's the point? That's the question, right? While you're doing it, like, what's the point? What are you doing? I know what you're literally doing. What's the point of the dissection?
See what it's made of.
Yeah, see what it's made of. You know what? You get a free pass. Next time, you just say it. Stop with the hand and just say it. Because you're back in the back, and it's just like, it's not fair. It's not fair. You know the parts. But if you dissected a frog, and it's all in parts all over the table, would you necessarily immediately be able to see that it makes a croaking noise or that it jumps? You might be able to tell the jumping because of the back legs. We're going to say you disassembled the back legs. All right? And they're just a little piece, like little toes. Do frogs have toes? I don't know. Or for example, if you went to the mechanic, the car mechanic, and there were just parts of an engine laying everywhere, would you know how the engine works? It'd be really hard if you didn't know how the pieces go together. I'll never know how the engine works. I'll just tell you that. You turn the key, and the engine works. And if it doesn't, you tell your husband the engine doesn't work, and then he makes it better. But someone with a mechanical mind could examine an assembled engine and figure out how the engine works. It's not me. But if it's in pieces and you don't know where the pieces go, you won't know. Do you see that sometimes when we divide something into little bitty parts, we lose the whole? Does that make sense? Like you've got all the ingredients for cookies laid out on the counter. Is that a cookie?
No.
Does it even smell good? I mean, vanilla always smells good. But, in general, they don't smell like cookies. Picking things into their parts can be very useful for exploring, right? And if I wanted to learn how an engine works, I would have to eventually examine the different parts. And if we want to find out how the frog's little heart beats, except it's not beating anymore by the time we do this, hopefully. But, we have to open it up. But you lose the whole. But Descartes said, no, this is going to be my second rule. I'm going to just pick everything into little tiny pieces. And we're going to examine every little piece, and then I know it. I don't know. Okay, what's his third rule? Okay, Neil, take it.
Conduct my
Do you want
thoughts
it?
in an orderly fashion, commencing by the easiest and simplest things to go higher and higher by stages.
Okay, I want to think in an orderly fashion. Everything I deduce because this is going to be deductive reasoning, right? I have an idea, and I'm going to deduce other truths from it. Everything I deduce has to come from the thing before. It has to legit come, just like geometry. Just like geometry. Okay, what's the last one? Yeah, go for it, Gabriel.
To understand it to understand it enough to have no doubt about it.
Well, that was kind of the first one.
Make enumerations and reviews.
Okay, he said do enumerations and complete reviews, so make sure I didn't leave anything out. This is the only one I really like. Review is good. You should review. But the other three, well, doing things in an orderly fashion. This is also okay. The first two, though, are maybe problematic. But he says, this is my method, discourse on method for conducting one's reason well, and seeking truth in the sciences. This is my method. I will not believe it unless it is plain and self-evident, we would say. And everything has to come from that. And I'm going to go back over all my steps repeatedly and make sure every little step is separated and set apart. That's what he says. So he says, this is what I set out to do. But in part 3, he has a little problem. He says, well, these are going to be my rules, but yeah, I don't know anything now because I've decided not to know anything. So I don't know anything. How do I live? Yeah.
It's like he made another set of rules that he was going to do.
So I'm going to follow these rules
Until he finds
until I find the truth from the other rules.
So I made 4 more.
So he says something like this. So you have a house, and it's a crummy house. And so you decide you don't want to end up with the building that you can't get there from here. And you decide to rip it all down and build a new one. You got to live somewhere while you rebuild the house. You can't just, you could live in a tent, but you know what I mean. Generally, we don't want to live in the open air, in the rain. We need to have some sort of shelter, and this is going to be his shelter. These are the rules I'm going to follow while we see what I can find out with my method. And so we have another list of rules. What are the rules to follow while we use the other rules to find something that's true? What's one of them, Noah?
obey laws.
Okay, obey the laws of the country. This is a good rule. I'm totally 100% with Descartes on this. Obey the laws and customs of my country. I don't want to be in prison, although you could still think in prison. But he doesn't want to be there. So I'm just going to go along with what everybody in my country thinks is cool. What's his second one? Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. To be firm and resolute in his actions.
Yeah, let me read that whole sentence. Okay, this is another one. Let's pass judgment on Mr. Descartes, who's way smarter than we all are, but seriously? Okay. My second maxim was to be as firm and resolute in my actions as I could, and to follow the most doubtful opinions, once I had decided on them, with no less constancy than if they had been very well assured. I'm going to follow whatever decision I make, and I'm going to double down on it no matter what, even if I find out it's wrong. And he says, it's like this. You're in the forest, right? And you lose the path. And so you start wandering around looking at the path, and you could just kind of walk in this 3-mile circle forever until you die in the forest or whatever. But he said, if you keep going straight, eventually you'll come to where there's no forest. And this is true. I mean, anywhere in the world, if you walk far enough, you'll get out of the forest, I guess. But can you think of a situation, well, instead of that, let me give you an example, and then you make the parallel. What if I want to drive to Peoria? Okay? And I decide to get on 80 headed to Chicago. And just in case you don't know, that will not take me to Peoria. Will never take me to Peoria. And I'm halfway there. I'm halfway there, and I realize that this road will not take me to Peoria. What would I do if I followed Descartes' rule?
Just go straight now if you make it.
I guess I'm going to Chicago. Goodbye, Peoria.
Peoria's
I'm
bigger
never,
than I
ever,
thought.
ever making it to Peoria. There's no,
Peoria's bigger than I
I mean,
thought.
yeah, the forest analogy worked great, but it doesn't work like that always. So C.S. Lewis famously said, we talk about progress, and literally it's progredi. It's a Latin word that means to move forward, to take steps in a general direction. And he said, we talk about modern progress, but he said, you only progress if you're going towards something. And if you're not moving towards the thing you want, the way to make progress is to turn around and go back, like that crazy building in my college, right? Go back to the front door and then find the right road. It's the only way you can make progress. Sometimes progress necessitates turning around and going back. But Descartes' like, no, we will not turn this car around.
So if you followed Descartes' thing, you would have never found your room.
Yes. Yes. It's like, I'm just going to have to, I'd still be on the third floor of Davenport Hall in Champaign. Okay. So what's his third maxim? His third rule? Yeah. No.
Conquer myself rather than fortune.
Yeah. Okay. This is not bad. Conquer myself instead of fortune. Change my desires rather than the order of the world. Accustom myself to believing there is nothing that is completely within our power except our thoughts. All right. You know what? We have a little prayer like that, like the serenity prayer, right? Help me to, I never can get it right. Help me to change the things I can and accept the things I can't change and to know the difference, something like that. In other words, change myself when I have to, because sometimes you can't change something outside of you. All right. But I just want to point out to you, because we already know where he's going. He's a thinking thing, right? It's his first idea he's going to get. I'm a thinking thing. So I need to concentrate on thinking. Okay, what's the fourth one?
The fourth one is to review the occupations that men have in life and not saying anything about the other.
And what occupation is he going to choose? He says, I need to choose the best occupation, and it is
Cultivating reason.
cultivating reason. Conveniently, it's the thing I'm already doing. Oh, thank goodness, because what if it was, I don't know, gardening? Like, I have to completely change my life. He says, yeah, I'm going to choose the best of the various occupations, and I decided, because I have as much reason as anybody else, that it is what I'm doing. So great. That's very convenient for me, that I get to keep doing what I'm doing. Now, listen to this, guys. Okay, so remember what we got. These are the rules that we're going to follow to find truth, right? And they're kind of rough, because I have to know it for sure and everything. These are the rules I'm going to follow in the meantime, while I, build the house. But he says, when I had thus assured myself of these maxims, my provisional, provisional meaning I will get rid of them when I don't need them anymore, right? When I had thus assured myself of these maxims and put them to one side, along with the truths of the faith, which have always held first place among my beliefs, I judge that, as to the rest of my opinions, I could freely undertake to rid myself of them. So he's got two groups. He's got these rules and the faith. Everything else, we're ditching it. We're ditching it and starting over. But guys, what's he going to do with this side after he builds this side up? What happens to this side when he's done with it? He doesn't need it anymore. And the faith was one of the things he put over there. Now, he doesn't say that because he's like, oh, yeah, I've always been a good son of the church. I've always had first place in my thoughts. Yeah, but you just lumped it with the things you can't really know and the rules you're going to follow while you find a better way. It's troubling, yes.
What religion was Descartes?
He must have been Catholic. Somebody asked me this yesterday. I didn't look it up. He was French. And France was in general very hard on Protestants. And they either, the Huguenots got killed or they ran away. So I'm guessing, and Queen Christina of Sweden invited him, and she's a Catholic queen. So I'm guessing he was Catholic. in this case, I don't even know that it matters. You know what I mean? He doesn't necessarily mean I'm putting the Catholic Church. He just means like Christianity, the truths of the faith. And I think we could read it either way. I'm putting them in this side. You know, we don't have time to explore this at length, but it's really hard to tell what he thinks about God here. He's already said, I don't want to trust it if I can't know it for 100% surety. Now, he is going to reason his way to God, right? So maybe let's take that idea and we'll bump it back, okay? Okay, so that's part 3. Here's where I'm going to live in the meantime. All right, part 4, we get down to it. So, what does I think, therefore I am mean? What does it mean? You've all heard it. Have you all heard it before you read this book? I think, therefore I am. Cogito ergo sum. What does it mean? Go for it.
Doesn't it mean like to be able to think, therefore you exist? Isn't that what it means? Essence is to think.
Yeah. So he said this, and actually he wrote another book after this because people asked him questions. And it was called Meditations on First Philosophy, and he elaborated on it. So I'm going to give you kind of the elaborated version, okay, in the Meditations. He said, okay, I'm going to pretend nothing exists. Nothing exists, and I don't exist, and everything, you all don't exist. Nothing exists. And I doubt that any of you exist. But I do doubt.
Yeah. This is, yep. Yeah,
Right? There's some, he said in the Meditations, I'm going to even pretend that if God exists, he's wicked. And he's putting all of you in front of me to trick me, because you don't really exist. I mean, he said this in the Meditations. I'm going to go that far. I have no way of knowing that anything in the entire universe exists. But I am sitting here thinking about it.
Yeah. This is the thing that's fallacious, because if you have doubt, that means something is true and exists.
Yes.
Or there is a truth.
There is
But
a
if you have
truth.
a doubt, that means you know something. So therefore, that whole idea that nothing exists it's impossible.
Yeah. So this he decided he plainly, clearly saw. This is step 1, right? If I'm not going to trust anything I don't plainly, clearly know, I know that there is a me that is thinking this thing. I don't know if there's a you. Sorry. Don't know. But I do know there's a me. Because I'm thinking. And nothing can't think. So this is his first step. He says, put it in his words, it necessarily had to be the case that I who was thinking this was something. And noticing that this truth, I think, therefore I am, was so firm and so assured that all the most extravagant suppositions of the skeptics were incapable of shaking it. I judged that I could accept it without scruple as the first principle of the philosophy I was seeking. I exist. Yay. You guys, questionable. But I exist. Now, here's the next question I asked you guys. How does he get from that? Because he's got I am here. Next, he's going to go, God is there. How does he get from I am here to God is there? Was this hard to follow?
A little, but I might have found a way to explain it. I could
Okay.
be wrong.
Okay, give it a try.
By looking at just the perfection of everything, that there can't be a way that this was just made out of nothing.
Yes. Well, he doesn't go that direction. Because we don't know if there is another thing that has been made yet, right? We need to find out if there's a God, because it might just be me and God. It would just be my brain and God. It'd be the whole thing, and they're all just figments of my imagination. But he said, okay, so I doubt. I don't know. You seem to be here, and the water bottle seems to be there. I don't know. I can kind of feel it, but maybe it's a trick. Don't know. So I doubt. And then it occurs to him, doubting is kind of an imperfection. If you don't know about something, it's less perfect than to completely know. But how do I know it's an imperfection? Because where did I get the idea of perfect? I'm apparently not perfect because I doubt. But I have an idea of something that might be perfect and doesn't ever doubt. Where would that perfect thing come from? Oh, God. God is the source of perfect. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of this convoluted long, but that's basically all there is to it. He says, God, no, I'm not going to take the time to go there. Never mind. Let me read a couple of things that he says in conjunction with this, though, and store them away for future reference. He says, from this I knew, by this is before he proves God, by the way. From this, the fact that I exist, I knew that I was a substance, the whole essence or nature of which is simply to think, and which in order to exist has no need of any place, nor depends on any material thing. Thus this I, that is to say the soul through which I am what I am, is entirely distinct from the body, and is even easier to know than the body. And even if there were no body at all, it would not cease to be all that it is. His essence is pure thought. He doesn't need a body. What do you think of that? Do we actually need bodies? What are bodies good for? Are we just thinking things that don't need bodies?
We would need bodies to act and do things to help each other in that way. But also, the soul cannot exist without the body, based on what's called Christian doctrine. They're together throughout all eternity, throughout life and into eternity after resurrection.
The fact that we have to think about it a little bit is because of Descartes. Because I think it too. Everything is like, I don't know. Because, the me, the real me, inside here, that no one really knows except God, and I know the thoughts of and everything. It's just kind of in there, right? But the Bible says that is so not true. I am not a thinking thing inside a body. I am a human being. Does that make sense to you guys? I have to have a body, or I'm not a total human being. So dead people, we don't call it a person anymore. We call it a body. And if we could meet disembodied spirits currently, they are not completely people. That's why there's a resurrection. If they didn't need anything, why resurrect our bodies? Jesus is forever with a body. He already has the new body, right?
Yeah.
You ever think about that? That before the incarnation, I mean, as much as before and after means anything in the Godhead, right? Which I don't understand. But now he forever is incarnate. He never goes back to what he was before he was born of Mary. That's huge. So so I made a little chart here. This is Descartes, and this is every single philosopher before Descartes. Honestly. Descartes says, my whole essence is thinking. Everyone before him, Christian and pagan, said, our essence is to be a compound of soul and body, right? They're not supposed to be apart. Something's wrong when they're not together. It's called dead. It's not normal. They're supposed to be together always. Everybody. I mean, from Aristotle up to Aquinas, everybody. It's like, no, human beings are combo. We're a combo pack, right? You don't separate them. Descartes says, I don't need a body. They, from the first one, says, you have to have a body because it's part of who you are. He says, my soul is distinct from my body. By distinct, he means completely separated. Completely separated. And everyone else says, your soul is different. It's not distinct. In fact, Aquinas said, your soul is the the form, right? The form of the body. It's the thing that makes you who you are. It's the thing that inspires, ensouls your body. And he says, I can know my soul better than my body. I can know soul better than body. In other words, it kind of sounds plausible because think about what's going on in your head right now. You don't have to share. It's like, how many minutes is left of this class? It's hot in here. I want to get a, frappuccino when I leave. Whatever's going on in your head, only you know, right? And you know it very well, what's going on in your head. I have no idea. He says, I can know soul better than body. Everybody else said, no, soul is very deep. It's hard to know our true motives. We all know this, don't we? You think you're doing something for one reason, but then it's revealed to you it was really a different reason. Bodies, on the other hand, like I can weigh and measure and touch and feel and smell and draw, and I can know the outsides of things very easily. I know your outsides. I don't know what's in your head. See, Descartes just flipped everything upside down with this. Everything that people had thought before. He changed it up. So, okay, actually, we'll do this when we look into, how do we know the material world exists? We need to put that, because now I'm a thinking thing. God exists because I have an idea of perfect, and it must come from somewhere. How do I prove that all of you exist now? Because it's still doubtful. How do I know the material world exists?
Wasn't it because it could be perceived in a certain way, right?
Okay. The things we very clearly and very distinctly conceive are all true. And I seem to pretty clearly perceive all of you, but it's only true for one reason. Because God would never trick me. God's good. I'm not sure how we decided. I mean, perfect. As perfect entails good for Descartes. And he says, God would never make all of you appear to me just to trick me and mess with me. So you must be there. Because this is the groundwork of his entire philosophy. And it seems a little sketchy. And it's even sketchier because he said, first of all, even what I have already taken for a rule, namely that the things we very clearly and very distinctly conceive are all true, is assured only for the reason that God is or exists. Follow me, and then we'll move on to part 5. I distinctly and clearly know that I am thinking. Therefore, I exist. I have an idea of perfect, so God exists. God would not fool me because he's perfect and good, and I clearly see you all. And the things I clearly see must be there because God exists. Let's go back around to the beginning. I clearly see that I exist before I know there's a God. Then I prove God, and then I prove the world, which is true because clear things are clear because God exists, but he said this was true before he proved God existed. He has a problem with his order. And a brilliant man, but I don't know if he saw it. Because there are brilliant people who have just made big missteps, in their thinking. Because apparently we don't all have equal reason. Or not every day, we don't have equal reason.
That's another thing. He said how they explained it was that he looked within himself to find the truth instead of because he said you can't trust anything.
Yes. So how did he trust that? Maybe if God is the one who makes all clear and distinct things true, how is this clear and distinct first?
Yeah. Because he based everything off of him, more or less.
Him
Not
and his
necess-
reason.
Yeah, him and his reason.
It revolves around him.
It revolves around him. It's very, what we would call subjective. Revolves around me. Okay, part 5, we hear a very, very long treatise on the circulation of blood,
It's like a science class.
in which he proposes that you acquire a body of some sort, a heart, so that you can examine it while you read.
Yeah.
Like everybody just goes to the store, yeah, I'm going to sit down and read part 5, got to go get a heart.
Yeah.
Except I guess you go hunting or whatever and butcher cattle, but
Yeah, that was interesting.
yeah. So I tried to pick a couple of questions to get to the heart because it goes on forever. I don't even try to follow it. And by the way, he apparently at one place he says that the key to the circulation of blood is heat and rarefication. Heat makes it. Like, dude, no,
Yeah.
the heart is a muscle and it pumps it. So, but, now this might be hard to find. To what does Descartes compare the human body? And he doesn't compare it the same, he does it twice. It's not the same thing. This is sort of a more nebulous thing. Do you think you know what I meant?
An animal is one that he did a lot, but he also did a tree in a certain.
Okay, yeah, okay. So that I need to rewrite that question because those are both very true. Yeah, that was not a good question, obviously. So I'm going to, because I asked a very poor question, I'm going to read a couple of passages to you. He says, this movement, which I've just been explaining, blood, follows just as necessarily from the mere disposition of the organs that can be seen in the heart by the naked eye, as does the movement of a clock from the force, placement, and shape of its counterweights and wheels. In other words, you ever rip open a clock? It's got all the little gears going around. And if you put this gear next to this gear and this gear next to this gear, so they make toys like this, right? Maybe one of you guys had you can put the gears in different ways and spin the handle and you can make it work. And it has to. Yes, go ahead.
Another thing like that's kind of like a Lego mechanism.
Yes, exactly. And once you set it up, it has to work that way, right? If you turn this, this will turn, which will make this turn, which will make it has to work. And he says, if you look at a heart or any other, like anatomy, you will find out that it has to work the way it does just because of the way the parts are situated. Just like a clock has to work the way it does, or a car engine has to work the way it does. If the parts are all in this order, it has to work that way. So he says that. He said, the heart works like a clockwork. And then he says this. He says again that our bodies have to be the way they are to work the way they are. This will in no way seem strange to those who are cognizant of how many different automata, robots, or moving machines the ingenuity of men can make, without in doing so using more than a very small number of parts, in comparison with the great multitude of bones, muscles, nerves, arteries, veins, and all the other parts which are in the body of each animal. For they will regard this body as a machine, which having been made by the hands of God is incomparably better ordered, and has within itself movements far more wondrous than those can be invented by men. My body is a what? I am a machine. I am a thinking thing lodged inside a machine. This is sometimes referred to as a ghost in a machine. Sometimes it's a ghost in the machine. And it means I'm a spirit, I'm a soul, and I'm operating a machine. A machine which has no part of me, right? It's not me. So I think I told you guys this. I have to tell a story, because how often does this really actually make sense to tell in class? So my son goes to this weird thing in Chicago every year, the Oddities and Curiosities Expo. Did I tell you guys about the bobcat? Okay. So I really like, mice and cute little small rodenty mammals. And so he usually goes and takes pictures because people taxidermy them and then they dress them up. This year there were little chipmunks dressed as showgirls. So cute. I wanted one. And then there were little weevil dioramas. There were little weevils and they were sitting reading little tiny copies of The Very Hungry Caterpillar. It was adorable. But last year, there was a bobcat. It was way expensive. There was this bobcat, taxidermied bobcat, but they took the middle part out, the belly part out, and it was this little shadow box in there, And it was all controls and dials and stuff. And there were little mice sitting in there working the controls like the Bobcat was a machine and the little mice were operating it. I really want one. I loved it. It's just the cute little mice. It is a little creepy. And it's very much what Descartes is saying. Like, we're all just little mice operating the Bobcat machine. That's not really what he said. And that's not a Descartes quote. But the idea has stuck with us. So that when I said to you guys, do we need bodies? It's like, is a body, I don't know. Because the real me, is in there. And then it just operates the machine. This is Descartes.
It kind of shows how Descartes' philosophy, that idea, sticks to the modern people.
Yes.
Because we weren't able to answer that right away.
It really has stuck with us, the idea that our body, and does it, operate like a machine in some ways? Sure, but here's the problem. If my body's over here and it's a machine and my mind, how do we explain certain things like when you get scared or very nervous, your body shakes, sometimes your color changes, sometimes we pass out. Apparently they're connected somehow. I mean, it's painfully obvious. All reason tells us that things that happen to our souls inside there affect our body, or vice versa, right? But often we have, if we're embarrassed, we blush.
Kind of reminds me of, you watched Inside Out.
Yes, exactly. It's exactly the same thing. And much healthier probably than mice operating a taxidermied bobcat. And so people immediately started asking Descartes this question. Dude, how are they connected? If you're just in there operating, and he can just get up and leave the body, how are they connected? And poor Descartes really thought about this. He did. And honestly, for the rest of the next 400 years up till today of philosophy, this is a problem that philosophers have been trying to explore. It's like we have mind over here and matter over here. Which one's more important? Which one's primary? It's like, oh, it's all reason and mind. It's like, no, it's all sense perception. It's all things that you can perceive through the body. But it's funny, but he was dealing with the information he had at the time. He thought they were connected, physically connected in your brain somewhere. And he thought it was your pineal gland in the base of your brain was where your soul was attached to your body. Yes, Jonathan. That's oh, really, Descartes? Yeah. So I would love to, in our 4 minutes left, but we can't, discuss what the difference is between a man and a robot, but maybe some other time. But let's finish part 6. What is Descartes going to use knowledge for? What's it good for? All this knowledge he's going to gain from his new method, what's he going to do with it?
Use it to find more knowledge and stuff.
Yeah, but that's not really an end in itself. Just gaining knowledge to gain more knowledge to gain more knowledge. Is there an end? Is there a point? Where's the page I'm looking for? Oh, here we go. How about if I read it, because we have 3 minutes. For these notions made me see that it is possible to arrive at knowledge that would be very useful in life, and that in place of that speculative philosophy taught in the schools, it is possible to find a practical philosophy. Practical means useful, by means of which we might be able, in the same way, to use them for all the purposes for which they are appropriate, and thus render ourselves, as it were, masters and possessors of nature. This is desirable, not only for the invention of an infinity of devices that would enable one to enjoy trouble-free the fruits of the earth and all the good found there, but also principally for the maintenance of health. And you might say, well, why does he want to concentrate on health? Because we need to keep the whole machine-mind combo as healthy as possible so we can do more thinking. So what's he want to do with knowledge?
Basically, perfect us to be able to control the world.
Control the world. And this takes us back to Mr. Bacon, Francis Bacon, who never really said these words, but he's associated with this phrase, knowledge is power. That was the message, even though he didn't say those words. Knowledge gives us power. You know what? It's been really cold outside in the mornings, right? But I bet you guys didn't wake up cold. I did because we left the windows open, but I didn't have to because I have a furnace. I control nature. When it's 95 degrees outside, I don't have to be hot. I control nature, right? I need to go to the grocery store after this, and it'll be a long walk, but guess what? I control nature. I'm going to get in my little car, and I'm going to be there in 5 minutes. It's very convenient. But Descartes says this is the only reason we need to know things. We need to perfect this method because we can be the masters of nature. We can make it all do what we want it to do. We're in charge. And this has also stuck with us, right? We like our stuff. I really like my furnace. It's very cold in the winter, right? I just bought a new washing machine. I very much like the washing machine. But this idea that we learn things for them to be useful to us. And you guys, we've all done it. And guess what? I did it too. When you're a student, when you're younger, it's like you got to do some course of study. And what's the thing you say? This will never be of any use to me. I said it too. Guess what, guys? That's not why you learn anything. It's not supposed to be. We learn it to be different people. Like we learn it to become literally different sorts of people with different kinds of minds that can think better about anything we want to think about. That's what geometry is for. It's not because I think you're going to actually, build the perfect triangle somewhere. Although it comes in handy to carpet your room and figure the area. And that's the mistake, teachers. We talk to you guys like, well, you'll use this. I use this in this particular instance. Guys, you're never going to use this. But it makes you different sorts of people who can step back a little bit. Every time somebody says something about being the master of nature or what a human being is, and you say, wait a minute, do I believe that? Am I just a spirit operating a machine? Or am I a human being created in the image of God with a body and a soul? And what does that mean for me? See, now you can think about that. Is that useful? I don't know. I'm not going to pretend that it's useful. But if you think about it, it will make you different sorts of people. That's all I got to offer. But Descartes took that away from us. And Bacon, and a lot of other thinkers. I'm not going to pin everything on these guys. All the ills of the world are from Descartes. No. But it did shake our belief. So I'm going to leave you guys with this last comment from Thomas Aquinas. And I think I've used this before. So Aquinas said, I never quote it perfectly, but I'll do my best. The slenderest knowledge of the highest things, the tiniest amount of knowledge that you can have of the most important things is better than the most complete and perfect knowledge you can have of lesser things. You can know 100% everything there is to know about that frog you dissected. Unless maybe you should watch a live frog too and watch what they do. That would help, because after it's dead, it doesn't do much. And I can really know a lot about it. I'm never going to know a whole lot about God, like even in eternity, because it says no man has ever seen God the Father. Do you know what I mean? I don't understand. But Aquinas said, knowing the little bit I can know about God or my spiritual walk with God or whatever is better than knowing 100% of everything about that frog. And Descartes said, no, I'd rather know the frog. I mean, honestly, he didn't say it like that because the church might have put him in prison, but that's what he was peddling. I'd rather know the frog than speculate and wonder and dream about God. And that's where we are. So we're going to read some sermons for next week. But the week after that, we're going to start Gulliver's Travels. And Gulliver's Travels, if you've never read it, it's funny and it's fun and it's adventure, but it's a real critique on where these ideas are going to go. Okay? Thank you. You guys have been very patient. Have a good week.
Alright, yeah, let's make more laws, but until these laws